everybody, Robert Dyer, and welcome to the Robert Dyer channel Christmas Countdown, where today I'm reviewing The Last Jedi, and I'll say in a word of warning, spoilers ahead, big spoilers ahead. Now, because this was a Disney film, I really expected at the end that Captain America was going to come on after the credits and say, you know, you waited 2 years to find out who Rey's parents are, and just like he did at the end of Spider-Man, you know, a big slap in the face to the audience sitting there waiting to hear something. Well, you know, we've been waiting 2 years, everybody's been speculating, and they end up just slapping everybody in the face. Now, when I came out of this movie, I naively thought that perhaps this was a ruse or something Kylo Ren was saying to manipulate Rey as to who her parents were. When I get home and I am finally able to read stuff after avoiding spoilers, what I'm hearing is that this is what the director means going forward, is that there is going to be no more mystery about Rey's parents. Having said that, I come out thinking, well, 3 stars, maybe 4 stars, and that would be on the basis of the throne room scene, which is probably worth the ticket price alone. And as I said, my naive belief that, well, this cop-out on the parents is just to try to kick the can down to the 3rd movie. Now, I actually liked The Force Awakens. People said the SJW Star Wars, Rey is a Mary Sue. None of that bothered me at all. I love the characters of Rey and Kylo Ren. I thought, Kylo Ren is almost as obsessed with Darth Vader as I am, and what they would say, emo Kylo Ren or whatever. That, I think, actually made a compelling character right off the bat. And then Rey was probably what I enjoyed the most about The Force Awakens. She's clearly the most powerful Jedi ever. And I think that was a lot of the excitement going forward for this trilogy, was the mystery about her parents and what we were going to see her do, since she was so good in that one. As she trained and developed, what sort of force power would she have by the 2nd and 3rd movies? I would say, for me personally, there hasn't been a Star Wars hero this compelling since Luke Skywalker. And speaking of Luke Skywalker, it's the way this movie treats him and Rey, and to a lesser extent Kylo Ren, that is its downfall. I think of when I was a kid how much I wanted to be Luke Skywalker, what a hero he was to many people, and a very good person, idealistic, heroic. 40 years of this character is brought down in about 3 hours in the movie theater by this film. You know, when you think about it, he did very little for being the most powerful Jedi. We didn't see much of what he could do in the original trilogy, so we've been waiting 30-some years for Luke Skywalker to put on his black outfit and for 3 movies here show us some mind-blowing stuff of the ultimate Jedi. Instead, we get the Big Lebowski, the dude. I don't know what that's all about. And he's got basically 3 segments over the course of this movie. One is go away, get off my lawn. Then the second part of the movie is Luke Skywalker tried to kill his nephew in his sleep. And then finally, for the big finish, you get Luke the coward. And being a coward is apparently so exhausting that it causes him to have a stroke and die. I mean, this is the greatest Jedi ever, you thought, when all those cannons were firing at him and he emerged at the end. Now he's finally showing what he can do. Nope, it's a hologram. Are you kidding me? You know that Luke Skywalker would never try to kill anybody in their sleep like a coward, much less his own relative. And this really, they drug Leia into this also, because at the end he's saying, well, I'm going to go out front and kill your son, and she's like, oh, all right, he's gone. I mean, that Princess Leia would never talk like that. Luke would never talk like that. And in fact, by contrast, Rey throughout this movie is talking the way Luke used to back in the original trilogy. She believes that Ben can be turned all the way through this movie. She's not giving up, and Luke would not, and Leia would not in the real movies. In this one, they're totally out of character. You just have to ask, why would the most powerful Jedi ever, who was supposed to balance the Force even for a second, be thinking about cowardly killing someone in their sleep and hiding out when he should have been back in the Force Awakens coming to do something? They wouldn't have gotten to this point. It reminded me of how Yoda was exposed as a coward at the end of Revenge of the Sith. It's kind of appropriate he popped up in this movie. When you think about all Luke did, starting back with the Death Star, all the adventures, and all this was heading towards him dying on a rock, clutching his life alert. Unless Luke comes back like Bobby Ewing in the shower at the beginning of the next one, I have no idea how they fix this mess. Now to the biggest problem, the Rey's parent situation. Now in The Force Awakens, it was absolutely unambiguous that Rey was the progeny of some major figure in Star Wars history. Now Luke Skywalker and Ben Kenobi were the two boring possibilities that were considered, and for me personally, based on, I guess, my own selfish preferences and some of the clues in the movie, is that it would have been either Emperor Palpatine or Emperor Palpatine some way using Anakin Skywalker's DNA to create this new most powerful Jedi that would turn to the dark side. And you know, if you know the history of Palpatine with his master that was alluded to in episode 3, they have some knowledge about how to manipulate life, so this made perfect sense. So you have all these clues. She's the most powerful Jedi ever, it's obvious. She's good at all the same things that Anakin Skywalker was: the pilot, the engineering talent, and all the force powers that he excelled at. She had the British accent. She has the lightsaber moves similar to Palpatine. She screams when striking at the opponent like Palpatine did. And she is clearly also very strong with the dark side. If you remember that scene in the forest where Kylo Ren is on the ground and she's walking around him, stalking, and the expression she had on her face. I mean, even Anakin Skywalker didn't gloat like that during the lightsaber duels. That was a pretty good tip-off there. So for 2 years, I'm waiting to see Rey shoot force lightning out of her fingertips, and Rian Johnson tells us, oh, couple of garbage collectors and they're in a pauper's grave. I mean, this is just the cop-out of the century. Johnson and Disney, they clearly have a political agenda with this, whatever you want to call it, with this move, but unfortunately it totally negates what happened in The Force Awakens. Now, it's true that you don't only get force sensitivity from your parents in the Star Wars lore, but Rey is not just someone who's only force sensitive. With no training, she can beat anybody she takes on with a lightsaber. She has the mental skills and mind tricks of the Jedi with no training. She repairs and pilots ships like Anakin with no training. If you think about how strong her mental capabilities are, is that she can read Ben Solo better mentally than his own mother can, and she is a Skywalker. I mean, think about that. And then there's this thing where she and Kylo Ren can FaceTime. And, I mean, did you ever see Darth Vader slide into Luke Skywalker's DMs? It never happened. So ultimately you have to conclude that Rey is a figure of prophecy, not just some random coincidental person that showed up out of nowhere. Most of all, it seems like the director forgot these critical scenes from The Force Awakens. The memory Rey has of the ship taking off, she's crying and reaching towards it. Now, if her parents were garbage collectors, who was taking off in the ship and why was she crying? What was that all about? That obviously negates what they've tried to set up here. She has a vivid memory of that. And secondly was when Kylo Ren said, "It is you," he says to her, that this is not somebody they're encountering for the first time or just finding out about. This is somebody he knows about, the known quantity. So if it was just a random person that's now come to their attention, that would not be the case. So I would say that this Rey cop-out, if it stands, is drained 90% of the excitement for Episode 9. And when you consider how they have little details like Han's dice or Luke's robotic hand has the burn mark on it from the time he was shot in the Sarlacc pit scene in Return of the Jedi, how do they blow continuity holes this big in the script? And speaking of the script, so many holes in an already weak plot, and so many things are started and reversed. Usually you introduce something, like if there's a gun in the scene, it's going to go off. The old rules, and here Luke says, "I won't train you, I will train you." They say you need a master code breaker. It turns out you need just any code breaker who, by the way, why is he in the cell if he knows how to open the door? And the script lacked those gripping moments, those OMG moments from something like The Empire Strikes Back, with the duel with Luke and Darth Vader, where they have that conversation, Han Solo being frozen. The only thing that came close in this movie was that throne room scene, where you have the big shock of the ultimate villain being struck down in the second chapter of the trilogy. And then you have this brief moment where Kylo Ren and Rey are working together, and there's all kind of possibilities from that point that could have gone all kind of directions, and then all of a sudden, no, we're not going anywhere. We're back to the status quo. And by the way, did you notice how similar the dialogue was between them in the throne room and Anakin and Padme on Mustafar in Episode 3? As far as Kylo Ren, how about the fact that with Snoke gone, who is it that's keeping him in the grip of the dark side? That makes no sense at this point. The TIE silencer was certainly underused. We never really saw what he could do. Rey is still established as a better pilot at this point. Chewbacca was there, but R2-D2, C-3PO, but they had nothing to do at this point. And finally, I'd say that this Star Wars was the first episode that I felt like checking my watch. I can't really imagine going to see it for a second time. I actually would be pretty bored just waiting to get to those answers we've been waiting for 2 years, and they just never end up being revealed. So has Disney killed Star Wars? I would say they've certainly killed 90% of the excitement for the next chapter. But as far as people saying, oh, Disney is The Last Jedi's destroyed my childhood, they can't destroy your childhood. They can't take away the other movies. We're free to ignore this movie, which certainly is blasphemous in many directions. I would say that the big winners this weekend were George Lucas and secondly the Star Wars EU, because all of a sudden now I think a lot of fans of these original trilogy characters are saying, you know, there's thousands of hours of books and comics out there that are more canonical than this flick we just saw, so there's probably going to be a resurgence of interest in that at this point. I will see the next movie just because I like these characters of Rey and Kylo Ren. There's still some potential there, but unless J.J. Abrams can clean up the mess that happened in this movie, it's certainly not going to be what it could have been. Rian Johnson is similar to Zack Snyder in that he just doesn't respect the source material, which makes Rogue One look like The Empire Strikes Back when you think about that great Darth Vader scene and some of the other touches they put in there. So for The Last Jedi, I'm going to have to say, as a Star Wars film, this is a direct-to-video quality chapter, and I'm going to give it 2 stars. Hope you like this video. Share it with your friends. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time, tomorrow, on this Christmas countdown. Bye, everybody.